A ball is played quickly down the left side. Kylian Mbappe is running at pace, and the man in front of him is not a defender at all. It is Viktor Gyokeres. One of the most feared strikers in the Premier League, wearing the captain's armband for his country's biggest attacking moments, is now the last line standing between Mbappe and goal. This is not a mismatch anyone predicted when the tournament began. Gyokeres steps forward, tries to close the gap, and within seconds Mbappe has gone past him and buried the ball into the net. Sweden's World Cup, a tournament they were not even supposed to be part of a year ago, ends in that single moment. That is where this story actually begins. Not with the final scoreline, not with the group stage form, but with one attacking icon caught defending against another. Thierry Henry, watching from the studio, could not hide his confusion. He questioned out loud how Gyokeres was ever expected to stop Mbappe in a straight one-against-one contest. It is a fair question, and it tells you everything about how stretched Sweden were in that moment and how dominant France have been throughout this competition. Here is what was actually on the line. Sweden had already achieved something remarkable just to be at this World Cup. Gyokeres was central to that qualification story, and if Sweden had somehow found a way past France, it would have been one of the shocks of the tournament. Instead, they ran into the best team at the World Cup so far in the worst possible moment of the draw in the round of 32. For Arsenal supporters specifically, the stakes were personal. Gyokeres is the club's top scorer, fresh off a Premier League title, and every match he plays at this World Cup carries extra weight because of what he means to the Emirates faithful. A heavy tournament exit, especially one that ends with your own striker exposed defensively against the best player in the world, is not the way anyone wanted this story to close. Before I go further into how this all unfolded, and before I move into the transfer situation building around the club this summer, if you want the full picture on everything happening at Arsenal right now, this is the channel for it. Hit that subscribe button if you want deeper analysis like this delivered consistently, because there is a lot to unpack today, and it does not stop with one World Cup exit. Let me take you through this properly, moment by moment, separating what is confirmed from what is still speculation, because there is a lot of noise around Arsenal right now, and it deserves to be treated carefully. Gyokeres and the Mbappe moment. Going back to that France versus Sweden game, France were always going to be favourites. They have been the standout team of this World Cup, and Tuesday night only reinforced that. Mbappe scored twice, and the goal that mattered most for our purposes was constructed beautifully. He picked the ball up on the left, found himself isolated against Gyokeres of all players, beat him with relative ease, and finished with a clean strike. Now here is my read on this. When Thierry Henry says 3 intelligent players understood exactly what was happening on that pitch, he is pointing at something tactical, not personal. Gyokeres is not a poor defender because he could not stop Mbappe. Almost nobody on the planet can stop Mbappe in a one-against-one situation at full speed. What this moment actually reveals is how France manipulated space to force exactly that mismatch. They wanted their most dangerous attacker running at anyone but a recognised defender, and they got precisely that. For Arsenal, there is no damage in this. Gyokeres was never selected or paid to defend transitions against Mbappe. This was a tactical trap set by France, and Sweden fell into it. What should matter far more to Arsenal supporters is the context around this exit. Gyokeres scored a hat-trick in the playoff semi-final and then delivered a late winner in the final just to get Sweden to this World Cup in the first place. Across 4 games at the tournament itself, he added 1 goal, 2 assists, and created 9 chances. That is a genuinely strong individual campaign wrapped inside a team elimination. My take is simple. This should not dent confidence in him heading into pre-season. If anything, it confirms he can perform on the biggest stage, even in a team that was ultimately overmatched by the tournament favourites. He now gets rest time before rejoining Arsenal, and that rest is arguably the most useful outcome of all, considering how heavy his season and international summer have been combined. Odegaard makes history now to the story that should be dominating Arsenal conversations this week, because it has been somewhat overshadowed by transfer chatter. Martin Odegaard has done something only 2 other players in World Cup history have managed since 1966. He has provided an assist in each of his first 3 World Cup appearances. The only 2 players to ever do this before him are Igor Belanov for the Soviet Union back in 1986 and Michael Ballack for Germany in 2002. 24 years later, Odegaard has joined that exact company. Let me put this in perspective for you. This is not a minor statistical footnote. This is one of the rarest sustained productivity records in the history of the tournament, and it belongs to Arsenal's own captain. Norway have reached the last 16 of a World Cup for the first time this century, and their captain has directly created a goal in every single game so far. That is elite-level end product delivered on the largest stage in football, under the most pressure a player can face. There is a second layer to this story that I think deserves just as much attention. Among every player to ever wear an Arsenal shirt, Odegaard has become only the second to score or assist in 3 consecutive World Cup matches. The only other Arsenal player to ever do it was Dennis Bergkamp, and that was back in 1998. Think about the list of attacking talent that has passed through Arsenal since then, and Odegaard now sits alongside Bergkamp on this particular record. That tells you something important about where his career currently stands. My analysis here is straightforward. Odegaard had a difficult campaign for Arsenal in terms of fitness and rhythm, dealing with multiple injury setbacks across the season. Yet he still became the club's first captain since Patrick Vieira to lift the Premier League title. Now he closes the season by delivering one of the most statistically rare individual World Cup records available. If you are looking for a reason to believe Odegaard returns to Arsenal for pre-season sharper and more confident than he has been in years, this is it. Form like this at international level does not simply disappear when a player returns to club football. It tends to carry over, and Arsenal should be the direct beneficiary of that carryover. There is also a financial angle worth mentioning honestly. Performances of this caliber on a World Cup stage increase a player's value and reputation regardless of what happens next. Whether Arsenal choose to build the next phase of the club around their captain, or whether his stock becomes attractive enough to consider other options down the line, this tournament has only strengthened his position. Either way, and I want to be precise here, his form right now is unambiguously good news for Arsenal. It is also worth pausing on the leadership dimension of this story. Odegaard is not simply a productive attacking midfielder at this tournament. He is doing this while wearing the captain's armband for his country, in a Norway side experiencing its first taste of World Cup football in a generation. Captains who deliver decisive contributions in must-win moments tend to carry that composure back into their club environment. Arsenal have already seen glimpses of that composure across this past season, most notably in the title-winning campaign itself, and there is a reasonable case to be made that a settled, in-form, historically productive Odegaard gives Arsenal their most reliable creative outlet heading into the new season. I do not think it is an exaggeration to say this has been one of the most encouraging individual storylines to emerge from the entire tournament for Arsenal specifically. Gabriel Magalhaes faces Haaland. Moving to the next major storyline, the World Cup round of 16 has produced a fixture that Arsenal supporters will be watching with particular intensity. Brazil against Norway means Gabriel Magalhaes lines up directly against Erling Haaland. A tense face-to-face moment between the two was captured before the tie, and it says everything about the magnitude of this individual battle. From a pure analysis standpoint, this is essentially a preview of a fixture Arsenal fans wish they could see every single week in the Premier League, except this time it carries knockout stakes on the international stage. Gabriel has built a reputation as one of the most physically uncompromising centre-backs in the Premier League, and Haaland remains arguably the most clinical finisher in world football. Whichever way this individual contest goes, it will tell us something about how Gabriel might approach similar battles for Arsenal next season, particularly against elite number 9s. I would treat this fixture as essential viewing for anyone trying to assess Gabriel's defensive ceiling heading into next season. Bournemouth hold firm on Alex Scott. Now let us move into the transfer situation, and I want to be very clear about what is confirmed versus what remains uncertain here. Bournemouth have made their position clear. They do not plan to let Alex Scott leave this summer, and they have already put a new contract offer on the table for the midfielder. Arsenal have made contact, along with other clubs, but Bournemouth are actively pushing to tie him down with fresh terms rather than negotiate a sale. My reading of this situation is that Arsenal are one of several interested parties rather than a club in advanced or exclusive talks. Bournemouth's stance is firm, and a new contract offer is a strong signal a club intends to keep hold of a player rather than sell. If Arsenal are serious about Scott, this now becomes a question of whether they are willing to trigger a release clause, meet an inflated valuation, or wait to see whether the player himself pushes for a move despite the contract offer. As things stand, this is interest, not a deal in progress, and viewers should treat it exactly that way. Illan Meslier linked as goalkeeper option next, a name that has emerged as a serious point of interest. Arsenal have shown strong interest in Illan Meslier, the 26-year-old goalkeeper who is out of contract at Leeds this summer. The context behind this interest is important. There is genuine uncertainty over Kepa Arrizabalaga's long-term future at the club, and that uncertainty is what has pushed Arsenal to explore the goalkeeping market for a potential replacement. From an analytical standpoint, a goalkeeper becoming available on a free transfer at 26 years old, with Premier League experience already under his belt, is exactly the type of value opportunity a club like Arsenal should be exploring. The fact that this interest is being framed specifically around uncertainty at the current number 1 position tells me Arsenal are planning contingencies rather than panicking. This remains interest at this stage, not a confirmed agreement, but the logic behind it is sound business practice regardless of whether it ultimately happens. Arsenal targeting 4 new signings. There is a broader picture forming here too. Arsenal are believed to be targeting around 4 new additions this summer, with an explicit emphasis on quality over quantity. This is not a club looking to make numerous squad-filling additions. The direction appears to be a smaller number of higher impact signings. My take on this is that it reflects a squad that already has a strong foundation following a title-winning season and does not need wholesale changes. 4 targeted additions, if they are executed well, could address specific gaps such as goalkeeping depth and defensive midfield reinforcement, both of which have surfaced in other stories this week, without disrupting the core group that just won the league. Ayyoub Bouaddi pursuit gathers momentum. Now to one of the more advanced situations on this list. Arsenal have reportedly moved into pole position to sign Lille midfielder Ayyoub Bouaddi. Discussions between the two parties are described as progressing positively, with momentum building as talks continue. Arsenal are said to be pushing this deal specifically to strengthen their midfield options, and the framing suggests they are currently ahead of any rival clubs chasing the same player. I want to flag something important here for accuracy. Pole position and progressing talks do not mean a deal is completed. This is a live negotiation, not a confirmed transfer. What it does tell us is that Arsenal have identified midfield reinforcement as a genuine priority this summer, and Bouaddi appears to be their most advanced target in that specific area right now. Viewers should watch this one closely over the coming weeks, because the language used here suggests it is closer to completion than some of the other names on this list, but it is not done yet. Interest confirmed in Kerim Alajbegovic. Arsenal have also held talks with representatives of Bosnian youngster Kerim Alajbegovic as the club continues to monitor his situation closely. This sits firmly in the early stages category. Holding talks with representatives is a standard early step clubs take when assessing a young player's availability, valuation, and openness to a move. It is not evidence of an imminent transfer, but it does confirm Arsenal's scouting network has genuine interest in him, likely as part of that broader plan to add 4 quality additions this summer, potentially with an eye on long-term development rather than immediate first-team impact. Testing PSG's resolve over Bradley Barcola, perhaps the most eye-catching name on this entire list. Arsenal are reportedly set to test Paris Saint-Germain's resolve over Bradley Barcola. The situation is described specifically as one where Barcola has not yet made a final decision on his future, and he is currently not expected to sign a new contract with Paris Saint-Germain. Let me be precise about what this means. A player who is not expected to sign a new contract at a club as significant as Paris Saint-Germain represents a genuine opportunity for any suitor. This is not a confirmed transfer, and Arsenal testing a club's resolve is a phrase that indicates early-stage interest and probing rather than an active negotiation for a fee. However, the fact that Barcola himself has not committed to fresh terms is the real story here. That detail alone keeps this situation alive, and it is exactly the kind of contract standoff that can develop quickly once a transfer window opens. I would treat this as one to monitor extremely closely, precisely because the player's own contract situation, not just Arsenal's interest, is what makes this realistic. I also think it is worth separating the psychology of this situation from the mechanics of it. Clubs test resolve for a reason. They do it when they sense hesitation, and hesitation from a player over a new contract at a club of that stature is not something that happens without cause. It could reflect uncertainty over playing time, a desire for a change of scenery, or simply a player weighing multiple options before committing to anything. None of that is confirmed here, and I want to be careful not to speculate beyond what is known. What is known is this. Arsenal see enough of an opening to actively probe the situation, and that alone tells you their recruitment team believes this move has a realistic path forward, even if it is currently in its earliest stage. Gabriel Martinelli's value debate. Finally, a lighter but still relevant moment from the World Cup coverage. Following a standout performance from Gabriel Martinelli against Japan, discussion emerged around what his valuation would now look like if Arsenal ever considered selling him, with one pundit suggesting a figure of at least £100 million. My analysis here is simple. This is speculative commentary reacting to a strong individual performance, not a transfer story or a club position. It reflects how quickly a player's perceived market value can shift based on a single standout international performance. Whether or not that number holds up in any real negotiation is a separate conversation entirely, but it does confirm Martinelli's stock is rising at exactly the right moment, heading into a summer where Arsenal are assessing their squad depth across multiple positions. Piero Hincapié's difficult night and red card. Let me close the individual player analysis with a much tougher story. Piero Hincapié endured a night to forget as Ecuador's World Cup campaign ended in a 2-0 defeat to Mexico at the Azteca Stadium. He was sent off in stoppage time for covering his mouth following a heated exchange with Mexican striker Santiago Giménez. The performance itself was underwhelming by most statistical measures. He was shifted from left-back into a central defensive role during the match and visibly struggled with the positional change. He won just 6 of his 13 individual duels and was dribbled past on one occasion. To be fair to him, he did contribute 6 clearances and 4 recoveries, so this was not a completely blank defensive performance. Local media outlets in Ecuador were unforgiving in their assessment. Both major football publications rated him at 3 out of 10, criticising his positioning after the switch to centre-back and his overall lack of defensive security compared to his usual role. My honest take on this is that positional changes mid-tournament are always difficult to execute cleanly, and shifting a natural left-back into central defence against a motivated Mexican attack was always going to be a significant test. The red card at the very end, for a reaction rather than a reckless challenge, adds a frustrating footnote to what was already a difficult individual night. The one piece of good news for Arsenal in all of this is practical rather than emotional. Mbappe should now be available for the majority of pre-season training, since his international summer has ended earlier than he would have wanted. Arsenal made his move from Bayer Leverkusen permanent for £34.5 million, and an early return to Emirates preparations at least allows him extra time to reset before the new campaign begins. So here is where all of this leaves Arsenal heading into the new season. One major forward, Gyokeres, exits the World Cup early, but leaves with individual numbers that suggest he is fully firing ahead of pre-season. The club captain, Odegaard, delivers one of the rarest statistical achievements in World Cup history and puts himself in company alongside Michael Ballack and Igor Belanov, while also matching an Arsenal club record previously held solely by Dennis Bergkamp. Gabriel faces arguably his toughest defensive test of the summer against Haaland on the biggest stage available. And in the background, a genuinely busy transfer picture is forming, from confirmed interest in a contract chasing Bradley Barcola, to advancing talks for Ayyoub Bouaddi, to goalkeeping insurance being explored through Illan Meslier, all under a stated plan to bring in around 4 new faces of real quality. Some of these situations are confirmed and progressing. Others remain nothing more than early-stage interest. My job, as always, is to make sure you know exactly which is which before you get invested in any of it. There is a lot happening at this club right now, and the summer is only just getting started. If you want every one of these stories tracked properly as they develop, with the same level of accuracy and separation between fact and rumour, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. I will be back with the next update as soon as there is something worth breaking down. One final thought before I go. Summers like this one tend to be judged in hindsight, not in real time. The names being discussed today, whether it is a contract-chasing forward in France, a goalkeeper weighing his options in Yorkshire, or a young midfielder attracting interest from multiple directions, will look either inevitable or forgettable once the transfer window actually closes. The value of following this properly now, rather than waiting for confirmation, is that you get to watch the actual process unfold, not just the headline at the end of it. That is the part of football I find most interesting, and it is the part I intend to keep bringing you through every stage of this window.